Recording. Welcome to Signature 2020. We are thrilled to have all of you here. My name is Solvay. I'm the Western District Secretary Treasurer. And before we before we begin, we ask that you update your name to show your name, chapter, and pronouns. We are joined here today for the WDAA panel by Nwachukwu Oputa, who's the WDAA Director of Communications and an Eta Omega alumni. Natalie Kimura, is that how I say it? Sorry about that. And she's the WDAA TBS president and who is also an Omicron alumni. And Chelsea Monroe, who's the WDAA KKPsi president and Kappa Eta alumni. So yeah, I will go ahead and let you guys kind of take the floor.
You can go ahead first.
Okay. So I think, Sarah, you're our main person here. So I'm going to speak directly to you. But for any of you watching this video at any other time, hello to you guys as well. So we're going to kind of talk to you guys. We want to hear some of your questions about adulting, about resume building, things like that. So let's first start with talking about like where we are professionally. I graduated this year with my bachelor's in theater arts with a minor in deaf studies. And I've worked with kids my whole life. I've worked with individuals who have autism, and currently, because of the pandemic, I am door dashing. Mm-hmm. Natalie, do you want to go next?
Sure. I graduated with a BA in Film and Media Arts 4 years ago, but I've been pursuing in screenwriting and trying to write movies and make short films. And that's made it even harder with the pandemic going on. So I have actually a lot of experience with applying for writing programs and applications and researching for all those big writing programs or graduate programs across the board and across the nation. So that's like my big emphasis, but I have plenty of other things, but that's my main one I've been focusing on for like the past 2 years. Because I want to be a director. I mean, I am a director, but pursuing it actively. And I'll give it to Chelsea. If you can hear.
Hi, I'm Chelsea. I graduated from the University at Buffalo in 2013 with a double bachelor's in French and communication. And I have worked in retail and car insurance, and now I am in healthcare management. I work in the ER for a local hospital, overseeing our team who collects your insurance and your copays in the ER.
Cool. So we want to kind of like build this like together. So Sarah, what are some of like the questions that you may have? Solvay and Hannah, you two as well. What are your kind of questions? And that way we can gear our like answers towards those.
I have a question just to kind of start off the conversation. I guess one of the biggest kind of hurdles I've been running into a lot in this whole time is just what's the best way to network in this sort of pandemic climate and like reaching out to jobs and people and things like that.
I was going to answer your question with the question, but what is your field exactly that you graduated in or you want to focus on?
Yeah, so I graduated with a double bachelor's of science in astronomy and mathematics. And currently I'm just kind of looking at like industry jobs or like staying in the STEM field somewhere. But I'm just, again, like I'm kind of in the boat of like anything that remotely uses my degree, I'm good with.
Well, I was going to say, depending on your field of work, I actually know the brothers have this. I don't know if the sisters do, but the brothers I bring them up because they actually do have like Facebook groups where brothers from similar STEM fields are together and they talk to each other. And that's where I would say, since you're part of TBS and you're still active and graduated, I would say actually reach out to, and there's an alumni group as well for TBS, and ask out, or at least that's one pathway for networking, to like actually reach out for people in that same field. That's a start. And even on top of that, I would also say another path is also talking to your professors or from your school, because they would be your best network as well. At least that's the starting point. And then they can be like, oh, I know a person. And then they'd be like, I know another person who knows another person to know another person. And it goes on and on and on and forth. Because that really is what I've learned is like that works, except it's like a totally different field of writing and screenwriting. Because I literally use Twitter. And that's how everybody, at least for that one in particular, does it. But I would say Facebook groups and your school would be your biggest starting point. Okay, sorry, my dog got scared.
I'd agree with that. And especially that last thing she said, Facebook groups. I know that Facebook has been kind of like plugging their groups in different things. And some of them are random things like disapproving corgis, but some of them are like actual groups of like people in professional fields. And I know that there have been from getting like resources and like job like, what are they called? Postings, that's the word I'm looking for, to also just like people who like get it. I know there are people who are like in a group, like let's say they're in like the ASL interpreters like group on Facebook that just has people across the world, but then they're in like the queer ASL interpreters and they talk about like their experiences based off of their like niche group type things. And so like there's a really good network of people on Facebook groups that I've noticed. And I think that because, like you're saying, we're all doing things virtual, it's a double-edged sword. Well, wait, no, it's good and bad. Double-edged sword means it's bad both sides. I lied. It's not a double-edged sword. It's both. Bittersweet. There we go. Okay. But anyway, because everyone knows so many people are doing things digitally. And so, yes, you may not be able to go into a place. And so if it's hard for you to get up and go to places, then this might be something that's easier for you. At the same time, if you're someone who's like, I prefer to go in, but I don't really like talking to people like over the internet and things like that, it might be more difficult. But just kind of having to push through that, or having people help you write out these messages to people, and just doing as much research as you can. And like she said, knowing people in every field, I've noticed that that's something that like gets you that next step, is just knowing people or understanding people or being able to relate to people.
And I got distracted in the corner because of not my dog, my roommate's dog. But if you're just recently graduated too, and if you were like looking into the future of like a graduating program, that's also another opportunity to reach out to other professors and other schools and other programs, just even virtually, like sending out a query letter to like show your interest and say, I'm interested in doing this. They might remember you. And that's the crazy thing. They might remember you from like, oh, they sent such a nice letter from a long time ago. It could be an opportunity for like, okay, I have a position open for like a research assistant. And then they'd be like, here you go. And then it's literally like a word by mouth thing. That's like the most effective thing I've ever seen from like my experiences and from like what other people have done.
Any other questions?
I have one. So currently for my work, I'm a cheesemonger. So I work like in the food industry. That's not what I have what I'll be getting my degree in like a week. But do you have any tips for like navigating the switch from like, because like I don't want to stay in the food industry. Like this is just where I've been while I'm in school because it's convenient and it works. But I'd like to move to a more professional environment that uses my degree. Do you have any tips for like navigating that jump? I guess if that makes sense.
And what's your field of work?
So my degree is sociology. So really I'm looking for something that's gonna be like people focused, like helping people, if that makes sense.
I'll go first. You're good. I was just gonna say one thing that I thought of right now is and this applies, I think, to like every group, which is going for things that maybe you think are outside of, that might not be within what you think. So you're already saying that you have been working in a field that's not within exactly what you want to do. And I know for me, like what I thought of right now was I was working at a place where they work with children who have autism. And I realized that like a lot of my skills because of acting work well with that, and like in terms of the temperament. And so I think that like making maybe like, if you're not able to do the jump right into exactly what you want to do, maybe taking like steps, like, okay, this is a little closer to what I want to do and balances the skill sets that I have, and then kind of moving yourself closer. That was one thing that I thought about. I know Natalie was going to say something too.
No, I agree. It's hard. It's hard to like reach into something to have the experiences, especially if you're like, oh, I just graduated and I don't know where to go. And the weird thing early is I read a book like during my senior year. It was like at the it was in the used bookstore, and I found it for like $3. But this book was literally talking about like this transition of like going from school to adulting. And the biggest takeaway from it, it's a really good book, by the way. If I'll find it later, but it's a good book where it's talking about all those skills like you get from like, even from like retail or from anything. Those are really useful skills anyway. And especially being in this organization, I noticed that's what my biggest strengths are on my resumes. They're the biggest takeaways to like, say, project management, project promotion, working with communications across the nation. Like those are really big things, like skills like, oh, I didn't really think about them being really useful, but they are really useful for like any field of work, because that's usually what people are looking for. And then even if you just mention like, oh, I was the district VPSD or I was a chapter president, those are things that people will be like, oh, what does this mean? And then you can like show off your strengths from, oh, I did this and then I did this, and it kind of builds off to like help you like in the long run. It's just really weird. And it's like you don't get paid for it, but it's a nonprofit, and people are always like, oh, why did you do this and versus this while you did this and while you did that. It's really weird how all those skills translate into like your biggest strengths, and you didn't know you were practicing it. At least that's what I've learned from a couple of years after graduating and like being away from it, because I was like, oh, what was the point of doing this, what was the point of doing that? And then I was like, oh, this did help. I didn't realize I was miles ahead from other people and other candidates, and that's why I've gotten a start into the field of what I wanted to. Like I got video editing job from TBS, and that really shows like, oh, this girl can do video editing, and that helped me like jumpstart like, okay, now people can see I have the technical skills, because it's not really a typical thing for like girls to be in film, even though we've been working on that, and it's been the back and forth. So like those translatable skills like in this really does help you. And that it's like, no, they can be your biggest strengths in what you're looking for in your field of work, even if it is like not like directly linked into it. But yeah, like Nwachukwu said, it's like you're gonna get closer and closer to it. Does that make sense? Yeah.
And then like to kind of piggyback off that too, do you guys know the difference between a resume and a vita? Okay, so, oh wait, Solvay, you said you do? Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah,
so
it's the curriculum
do you want
vitae, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. No, you go ahead.
No, yeah, you're good. So a resume literally means, it's French for summary. And I was looking this stuff up earlier. I don't just like know this off the top of my head. But and then curriculum vitae is Latin for course of life, and vita is spelled VITAE. But so your resume should be like tailored for the job you're applying. So like I have my basic resume, but then based off of what I'm doing, like I'll like edit it. So it's like, okay, I have my resume with like the things that I've done, but I'm applying to work with kids. So I'll emphasize that I worked with kids with autism. I'll emphasize that I was a camp leader at my old job. I'll emphasize that I used to do like parties with kids, and maybe not emphasize some of the other things that I've done, right? Whereas if I know that I'm applying for something more technical or something more in the like media area, I might talk about how I used to do social media and marketing at Fresno State. I'll talk about something different, right? And so that's what your resume is. And what I do is, like I said, I keep a thing that has a lot of things, and then I tailor it and like edit it, and I'll be like, okay, like BIA resume 2020 or whatever, so that if I'm applying to a similar place again, I can just use that. But then a vita takes all of the things that you have and the skills that you have. Things that you have done and the skills that you have. So like a vita would be more like and like, don't get me wrong, I have served like chapter and district roles on my resume as well. Cause like she was saying, those things, one, they give them something to ask about and you can get into them just exactly like Natalie was just saying, but it also shows that you're not just like one track in what you do, like you do have other things going on. And so on like a vita, it would have like all the positions you've had. Maybe if you're in the arts, it would have more specifics about the projects you've worked on, if you've done some sort of internship somewhere, et cetera. But it's more about not just the jobs you've had or the positions you've had, but the skills that you have as well. So like, I'm gonna read a couple of things, and this link, it's off of UC Davis's website, and I will send it in the chat in here if anyone wants to go to the website that I was looking at to like differentiate. But it says, so like resume is to emphasize skills used for applying for a position, no longer than 2 pages. And then and then it's more the recent things that you've done, right? CV, curriculum vitae, emphasizes academic accomplishments used for often when applying for positions in academia or fellowships or grants. Length depends on the experience, depends on how much experience you've had, and has a complete list of publications, posters, presentations, et cetera, et cetera. So like that kind of gives you a small distinction between the two. Yeah, and I think that that's important just to know and to just keep tracking all of the different things you're involved in. Exactly like Natalie was saying, being in TBS may seem like to you, like, of course, a fun thing that you did, but you don't realize how much like time management skills you get, these like event planning skills you get from doing things like WDC. You're getting these skills on how to run virtual workshops by doing signature like this, right? And those are things that not everyone's gonna have. And so looking at the other aspects in your life and making sure you're keeping track, even if it's just a bulleted list and you can't make it organized right now, but start keeping track now, so that you can then put those things onto your vita and or resume. Yeah, Natalie mentioned in the chat, like even this event can be mentioned on those. I was gonna ask Sarah, what field are you in?
I just graduated with an English degree, so that's pretty broad. Yeah.
Do you have any sort of direction that you're wanting to go with that, or are you still trying to figure things out?
I'm still kind of trying to figure things out. I'm partly thinking publishing, just because I want to go into creative writing. But I also might just, go in it for the money for a bit.
Yeah, and that's always good too, to just get that job, be like, I just need to make money for a while before I do the thing that I want to do. And I think sometimes people think like you have to just like jump straight in, but even different random jobs, like being able to say, I was a cheesemonger, like that's going to be, if it's nothing more than just like a random way that they're going to remember you, like it could be that, or it could be like, oh, actually, we're thinking about something dairy. Who knows? It's like the world is random and you never know what your life, how your life experiences are going to help you in the future. So like live life, live your best life, do what you want to do. And like, you don't have to go directly into what people think is like that path to there. Like there's so many different paths. That was a random little like thing
I was
went
gonna
on, but
top off that. I was gonna say, like even certain skills, like even just being able to talk to a group and doing group discussions, that's something you have to put into practice, and it's not as simple as it looks. And even doing it through a virtual sphere is like something I'm sure like a year from now people are gonna be like, how do you work with a group of people? And then you can mention events like this and say, this is what we've been working on, and you're like, I'm well practiced in this, and I'm excellent at this. And they're definitely looking for that leadership to like lead into something anyway too. So it's your way of framing it too for whatever the job is or what they're looking for, and knowing what they're looking for as well, and like be like the cherry on top of being like the perfect candidate for whatever field of work you're in, if that makes sense.
And like with resumes as well, like you want to, for your field, look up what resumes for that field should look like. Because for instance, my general, like I'm just trying to get a job to make money resume starts with like my degree and like my past work experience and things like that. But I'm trying to audition for this show resume, because like I said, I was an acting major, that starts with my hair color and my height and, you know, the different shows that I've been in and things like that, right? If I put my height, my weight, and my hair color on my normal resume, they'd be like, oh, okay. But if I don't put that on my acting resume, right, then they're like, okay, I need to know who I'm looking at, what sort of roles you could fit in, things like that. And for instance, on that resume, I do have that I have a BA in acting, but that's more toward the bottom because they want to see oftentimes more of your experience and not just that you have that degree. That does help booster that type of resume, right? But for something like a medical position, right, they're going to want to know that you have a degree that qualifies you for that. So I think just looking into for your field, or for even if you can look at for the specific job you're applying for, looking at what resumes like that should look like. Yeah. Any other questions?
I was actually wondering, do you have any tips for like selling yourself, like in interviews, for example?
I'm thinking.
Well, I know that one that always sticks out is like how you, I'm trying to think of like my recent or any past ones I've done like this year. I know a good one is like, how do you resolve conflict? And I think that one's a really big one in any field that anybody's looking for because of like how our economy is going and how you approach that and how you answer it. That's usually, and I think having 1 to 2 stories of like how you would deal with that, or at least that one's one I always come up with no matter where I am. That one's the one I always think of because I know I act different, or you know, your attitude and approach for that one is like that one's really important because they want to see if you're like a team player or if you work better on your own. Are you okay with being independent, doing more skills with whatever? That one's one I would think about a lot, and probably saying your biggest strength. The biggest strength is probably what you probably need to work on. It's like those two are the ones I would think about the most because those always come up, regardless if it's a virtual thing or an in-person thing, because that's also just looking introvertly. introvertly into you.
Yeah. Looking
yeah, you
into
can tell my English.
yourself.
Yeah, you're looking into yourself, and they want to know like how you are as a person, no matter what field I can think of. It's like how you are as a person, and that's really, they want to get an impression of you, and that's really hard, is like being able to say who you are in like 20 seconds. It's like literally the biggest summary is like Miss USA, I believe, is the one that does the interview, like answering questions in 20 seconds. It's definitely that level. At least if you are getting higher and higher into what you want to be working on, it's definitely like knowing who you are, and that's not an easy question when they ask you in your 20s and they're like, oh, well, you need 5 years experience for this. It's really knowing who you are and being comfortable with who you are. It's like probably the biggest thing that people look for, or what I've noticed, or like with mindsets and how everything works and what's going on. I really think it's those for it. So that's a hard question and not an easy answer.
I'd agree. And I know that one of the things that I do, like she said, having a couple examples of working like through conflict, and maybe even if you can have examples that show different ways, because if you're like, oh, I did this, and then I did the exact same thing in this, like, it's like, okay, cool, you know how to do it one way. But if you have like maybe some like contrasting situations where maybe one of them you had to like just be like, yo, chill, and the other one you had to be like, you're going to do this, I don't know, but you know what I mean. And then the other thing, in terms of the strengths, so you know how they often are like, what are your strengths and weaknesses? One of the things that I like to do is, I don't like the term weakness, but I like saying things I can improve on. And so if they say that to me, I'm like, well, my strengths are blah, 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 blah. And like, I don't like the word weakness, but some things I think I can improve on are blah, blah, blah. And then that also gives you an opportunity to talk about how you can improve on those things. Because if you're just like, oh, I'm weak in these areas, it's just like, cool, you know it, but it's also not just about knowing where you're struggling, but knowing how you can make that better and how you can improve on that, right? There's another thought I had. Just practicing. Like you can literally have people just like read you some basic interview questions, because you know yourself, right? So you think, oh, if they ask me, I'll be able to say something, and then they ask, and you're like, and so being able to, with someone you're comfortable with, kind of think it through, because like the reason I can easily go, I don't like the term weakness, but what I did is because I've said that phrase so many times, right? And so the more I say it, the easier it is for me in the next interview to say, I don't like the term weakness, but the things I can improve upon are like, but it's like, it's canned, but it's also like, one, when I say it genuinely. I don't just say it the way I did right now. And two, it comes from a place of genuineness. It's very true. It's just I've had practice saying it. So instead of feeling like, well, I don't, sorry, just give me a moment, you know, I'm able to just kind of breathe through it and go on. And sorry if you hear squeaking. I also have a dog that I'm dog sitting for right now. So she's doing something back there. Are there any other questions?
Or any curiosities. You can also pick our brains if you want to.
And it doesn't have to be super specific. It can be something random. It can be something TBS related, something not, etc.
This one's a little random, but what's been the biggest like change that's been like surprising since like graduating? Like the biggest difference that you're like, oh, I didn't expect this to be something I was dealing with, if that makes sense.
Well, mine's ironic. At least my answer is ironic because I went away from home, it's very isolating also. Isolating, like you're trying your hardest to work into something that you want to do, and nobody knows the struggles that are going on. Even with like having virtual hangouts and working or not working or staying at home and doing adulting stuff, that's like the thing nobody really talks about, and that's what's so surprising. And on top of a pandemic, it's even more isolating sometimes, and people bring it up. I have a hard time saying it, but it is like a struggle to like say, oh, I'm not quite there yet, but I'm also young enough to like get going. And sorry, I'm getting distracted by a dog again. I would say it's very isolating, like in your 20s, and nobody talks about it, and I don't know why, or don't know how to explain it, because it's like you're really trying to get through, but you're okay to like hang out and work on it to your 30s and your 40s, or that's what I've noticed too, if that helps.
I think like to piggyback off that, I think even that's why like it's so important to not just find like professional like networking, but find friends within your field too. Cause like it is hard when like the people who you know and love and care about, but they don't quite get it, right? And so I know for me, similar thing, I was like, oh yeah, like I've been in band all these years, so I have all of these friends from like TBS and KKPsi and like all of these just like connections. But then I'm like, oh, I'm now in the theater world, and who I don't have anyone that I kind of that I like can bounce ideas off of or really like talk to in the same way. And recently I got really close with someone, and so it's been nice to be able to talk to him. But it's like before that I was like, oh, we're all in different fields, and like I love you guys and we get along and we have a good time, but I think it is important to find those connections within the field, and then that feeds back into that networking too. Yeah.
And you're also competing with everybody else too. You're competing with thousands more people.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird how we have the goods and the bads about technology. Like that's also a good thing and a bad thing at the same time, where thousands more are connecting with another person. You don't know it or don't know what's going on. So working on those genuine connections, even through a screen, is like so important. And I cannot believe I'm going to say this, like even with like my field of work, I found there is a writing community and I had no idea they existed, and I finally got some like feedback and help with like projects I've been working on for a couple of years, and it took a couple of years to build that and to finally reach that and see the potential of like what I've been struggling behind the scenes. So it's really strange experience, to say the least. But you don't have to do it alone.
And people are more willing to help than you think. And especially because I think people understand that, like, I scratch your back, you scratch mine, you know? If someone helps Natalie with what she's writing, and then in a year they need her help to like get into this company and she has an in, she's more willing to help them because they helped her, right? And then the other thing I was gonna say is also like finding the balance in your in your friends. Sorry, I got distracted also again by a dog. But finding the balance in your friends, because it is so important to have friends in your field, and it's so important to have friends where you don't have to talk about your field, and where you like Natalie was saying, that you're not competing with them, right? Like me and I have a friend who is a special ed teacher, right? And so I know that when I'm going out for a show, I don't have to worry about it. I can just talk to her. I can do my audition piece in front of her, and like she may not have the same like critical eye as an actor, but she also doesn't have the critical eye of an actor. So I feel closer or like more comfortable, right? Whereas sometimes I'm like, no, I need to complain about a director and I know she's not going to understand it, right? And so different things like that, being able to have that balance of like people who get it and people where you don't have to worry about them getting it, where they're just, your friends. Yeah. I think just relationship, I think, is what kind of like, I feel like we keep talking about. Yeah. And it's so hard, like you guys are saying, in this not only just digital world, but like now forced to be primarily digital world, Yeah, it's weird.
And I know I keep forgetting, I don't use it as often, but LinkedIn's actually not too bad. And if you set it up to like, you only get notifications from like job openings to what you want to do or the related fields, you will get sometimes notifications of those noted fields and they're like, oh, this is open now. Like I think last week I got a notification from a studio in Utah and I wasn't expecting that because there's nothing in Utah that I can work with. But it came out of nowhere. I was like, oh, okay, that could be a possibility. I was like, I don't know. Is that a sign? I don't know. But LinkedIn is definitely a good one. I know there's goods and bads with that one as well, but I forgot I made a professional account on that one with all of my experiences that are relevant to like just film stuff, and then it popped up out of nowhere. So that's something where you can do the hard work in the beginning, and then you never know, a year from now something might pop up, and then you might find somebody, and then they find you, and they're like, oh, we want you, and then you just never know, more opportunities popping up. Yeah.
Do you guys have any other questions, comments, concerns? I know we're getting toward the end of our panel. I have a question for you guys. Are there any specific struggles you've faced in terms of work or adulting or resumes since COVID? I know you guys have talked a little bit of, like, you've asked some questions, but are there any specific instances that have occurred since the shutdowns?
I know for me personally, it's just been really hard to get any sort of like response back. Like I've sent out like a bunch of applications, but it's like, and I've tried to reach out to those and follow up, not to every single one of them, but like the ones that I know that I really want. And it's been difficult kind of getting a response back for that and just getting some sort of like, answer on like what's the status of my application, what's the status of things, like did you find someone for the position, like what's happening. But I think that's been like my hardest struggle, and also just finding just like continuing to have the motivation to keep applying to places too has also really been hard, just because of not getting like any sort of feedback back from like, what am I doing wrong?
And two things. One, yeah, self-motivation, that is one of my hardest things. I know for me, sometimes I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do all the things. I'm going to be super productive today. And sometimes I'm like, I'm doing nothing. I'm sitting here. I just want to watch a new girl. But I also had a question. When you're following up with them, are you doing that through email? How are you doing it?
I've just been doing it through email.
Okay. I would suggest, because you know how a lot of places, they're like, you should always go in person and follow up, right? And obviously we either can't, or maybe for your own health, you don't want to do that. And that's totally reasonable. I think that calling would be your next best step in terms of that, because you're getting that. They're not just looking at ones and twos saying, hey, what's going on? Hold on, let me let this dog out. But I'll keep talking as I do. They're not just looking at ones and twos, they're hearing a voice, right? They know that you're putting in a little extra effort, not just to, type out an email, but to actually pick up that phone and make that call. I think that could be something that might be effective.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah.
And I was going to just a cherry on top of that one. I was like, even if we ever get to this point, I don't know if this is going to happen. I've even seen like for some interviews, if you do in-person interviews or in-person, I imagine virtual interviews, even sending like a thank you note in the mail is something they would not expect. If it's like safe, or if it's an office or something like that, that could also be something you can also do as an option, depending on who you're applying to and who it is. Also, just keeping that in mind, but it's also something that I've heard many people like, and then they remember that, and then they will think of you again if you didn't get the job or if you do. So something to think about.
Any other challenges you guys have faced recently?
People are just bad in pandemic times.
Mm-hmm.
I work in like a specialty grocery store, so we get those people that come in and are like, I don't want to wear a mask, I can't hear you, and they're so awful. So yeah, that's frustrating. That's been like the big thing for at least my work is just dealing with other people not being nice right now.
Yeah, I feel like in anything where you have to deal with the public, that's always the biggest. And I know right now even more like than normal is just the expectation to have such perfect customer service on this side, even when they're just like spewing like all of these things at you and you're just like, I'm smiling. At least now maybe you're wearing a mask so you don't have to smile. They don't know. But yeah, it's hard. And I think that one thing in terms of that might be like, and I don't know, it depends on your workplace and how your management is, but maybe talking to them and asking like if there are ways to protect you, because that's their job, right? So like, I know like, let's say if it's like super, super bad, maybe like being like, hey, can we like make it a policy that this happens? Or I don't know what it's like for you, but one thing I thought of is I know one of my friends, their manager put up like a sign that's like said something more about the mask, but basically it was just like, don't come in if you don't have a mask, but like more pointed because of how much they were getting from individuals. And she was like, I cannot deal with this. Like they're rude. I'm like going home in tears sometimes. Like I cannot deal with this. And so maybe just talking to your management and being like, is there anything we can do to prevent it from getting all the way to me, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say management one-on-ones. I'm very uncomfortable to talk about my feelings, so I'm very much a big old blank wall when it comes to it. But I notice like the really good managers that do take care of like an environment that deals with the public, which I am. And the biggest thing is like talking to the management and try to follow their example. That's what I learned. I like literally had a management switch right in the middle of COVID. It was really weird. It was very strange because she and I are very similar, except the way she deals with people, I've never it's like magic. Like she kills them with kindness in a way of like being the nicest person, but you know, being very strict at the same time. Like it was the most incredible thing I've ever seen. But what I really liked about her, I'm acting like she's dead. She's not dead, but the biggest thing I liked about her is she really does like care and like just having that genuine kindness and like talking and hearing everybody's concerns and hearing everything out and then dealing with we got them too, the people that don't want to wear masks, even though what I like to do, and this is it might not be the best thing, I like to hit them with knowledge and talk about the doctors that have to wear 4 more layers than what they have to do for 12 hours. And that's what I like to do personally, because then it guilt trips them in a good way. And then they have to think about that like I do late at night. And yeah, that's what I would think about. To counteract what they have to say is to kill them with education that they don't want to hear. Because that's what I would do and what I do to help with that. It's not perfect because people are crazy and they've shown their true colors from the 5 months of having to wear a little piece of fabric on their face. And it's not easy because they're foolhardy, but I also, really having the one-on-ones is like the important part about this conversation, and really talking and being able to know that your voice is heard, and then seeing and knowing that your reaction is the only one that you can control at the end of the day. And whatever happens to them, karma-wise, is going to happen. So to keep that in mind as well. And that's all I have to say. And hopefully you guys have other questions or comments or other things. Or we can do what we do at convention and yield our time.
That's fair, yeah, if there's nothing else.
Oh, did you guys want samples of, or at least I made samples on purpose just for this. I don't know if you want example. Oh, and use Canva. Use Canva for templates for resumes and for the CV. Sorry, Solvay, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, yeah, I totally take samples of resumes and CVs. That'd be super helpful. Or do you guys have samples of cover letters? I know cover letters, like, it's a weird thing because some of them, like some places still require them, but some places are like, no, we're phasing out the cover letter.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Natalie.
I was gonna say yes.
And I was just gonna say, yeah, cover letters are weird, and I still don't quite understand like why, but and especially because some people don't use them and some people do, but yeah.
I would say, at least for cover letters, I've learned like keeping it as short as possible is what they're looking for, and you can show off your skills in like a sentence. That's what I've noticed is like the biggest takeaways, because I've written a couple for other people. Getting them myself is really hard, but I really like writing them now, except nobody uses them anymore, but I've done it for like officer positions before, for brothers and sisters in the past, and it's really your big chance, or at least for what they're supposed to be, is really showing off your skills and like in one sentence instead of like seeing the whole resume in like a spreadsheet of your skills and your employment. So at least that's what I would say about cover letters for them, and keeping it as short as possible, because they really want to go like, okay, this is all it, and then they probably have to look at like 20 applications or something if they're requiring them. And that's what I would say for that. Short and simple. Show off yourself in one sentence, depending on the position, depending on if it's for a program or whoever gets to read it. And yeah, if that makes sense. Yeah. And Canva has cover letter templates as well. They have like a lot of different templates where you can just pop in all your information. You can even do a photo of yourself and you're done. So Canva's great.
Oh yes, professional headshots also important. And it depends on your field, but knowing what type of headshot, because a professional headshot like with like my instrument versus like for like to go on someone's website versus like my headshot for like acting, they're all going to be different, right? And so again, doing the research into your own field and knowing what you may or may not need for those.
And even sometimes they want, I've done essays. I've done like essay questions, and they do a word count for like certain programs that I've wanted to get into, but don't quite get far enough into the program. But sometimes they even have those as well. And it's ridiculous. And they only want it in a certain amount of words. So choose your words wisely if you have to deal with that. I know that's also something that's happened, or I've dealt with, and keep copies and examples of like what I've had to do. I've kept every single one just because of, it's good practice if you have to do it, and it could come up, and then you will have like plenty of materials. And keeping it in like one, I keep it on Google Drive because I'm sad and I don't really have anything else, but I keep all of my extra samples of everything somewhere so I can just look back on it and not work so hard on it, if that helps. And then you can do that a lot quicker, and it's just like copy and paste, or maybe just editing a little bit to like do that.
All right, I think we're turning it back over to Solvay then, yeah?
Sure. Well, Natalie, if you want to share those samples, I'm sure we'd appreciate it. I'm not sure what the right method of sharing them would be.
Email?
Yeah.
Would that be okay? Or a Google Drive folder? Or what would be best for you, I guess?
Definitely. We can also, well, yeah, we could, if you want to send it out to the people who are here now, and then maybe if you send it, when you send it to me, I can forward it to the counselors, and whenever the recording goes out, it could be like attached with the recording somehow.
Okay, I definitely have resumes, or I made like some extra ones just to see if I could do it still. Cover letters, it might take me a moment because I'm gonna probably ask the person I made it for and ask their permission, like, hey, is it okay if I share this, even if it's been a couple years? I think that's the only thing. I'm gonna ask for the cover letters, but I definitely have resumes, so like share in the chat.
Okay.
I'm sure Nwachukwu has some too.
I do, and I have them for different areas. So
Yeah,
we'll send
that's what
those
I have
on
too, like for
over
different
to you.
areas.
Yeah.
Cool. I'll do that.
Awesome. Well, I'll go ahead and stop the recording. Thank you both so much for doing this and answering our questions. Honestly, like the information you gave us like is awesome, and especially during this time, it's super helpful to hear that it's like it's still possible to do all this stuff even though things are a little bit more complicated. So yeah, here I'm gonna go ahead and stop the
Thank you.
record.